Thank you, Chair. Good evening. I'm sure I speak for everyone in here in condemning the terrorist attacks last week in the Pulwama district. My thoughts are with the victims and their families. Mr. Chairman, I'm absolutely relieved that after months of campaigning, advocating and working across political groups, this Parliament is holding this historic exchange of views about the human rights violations in Kashmir. I'm extremely grateful to you, Mr. Panseri, for making this happen. I'm not personally from a Kashmiri background. I'm a British representative of a region with a big Indian, Pakistani and Kashmiri diaspora, but with also a moral duty to speak out due to my country's role during partition. India obtained independence. Pakistan obtained independence, but the Kashmiris were denied their future. As a result, they have suffered so much. Kashmir has long been neglected and forgotten by the international community. In fact, this Parliament has not spoken on this for 11 years. That is why many are unaware of what's happening in Kashmir. They do not know that many Kashmiris live in hell in an area often described as heaven on earth. Sexual violence, mass disappearances and pellet gun attacks on civilians are part of the daily life for innocent people. Therefore, the recent UN report, which is the first ever UN report on the human rights abuses in Kashmir, brings a ray of hope for the Kashmiris. I am delighted to welcome Madam Chung, a UN expert. I am also pleased that we have representatives of both India and Pakistan here with us, and I hope they will respond to the conclusions of the report and address its recommendations and criticisms. To be clear, there are criticisms on both sides. The human rights violations in the Pakistani administered Kashmir are of a different magnitude and a more structural nature. It is a pity that we do not have any Kashmiris on the stage to share their stories, as they would be able to give powerful testimonies to all the abuses and violations experienced over the years. Parveena Angad could tell an emotional story of her unsuccessful search for a missing 17-year-old son. The women of Kunan Pashpara could share their horrific stories about mass rapes and torture by the Indian security forces experienced 27 years ago. Farouk, one of the thousands of people that the Indian armed forces shot with pellets, could repeat his words quoted in the Amnesty International report. The pellets have turned everything black. My ambitions, my dreams, my whole life. Recently, an Indian friend told me that her father, while serving in the Indian Army, saw at first hand that fellow soldiers would stage fake encounters. These resulted in the deaths of innocent Kashmiris so they could gain promotion within the army ranks. She told me her father did not wear the uniform to witness that kind of despicable behaviour. Dear colleagues, these are just a few examples highlighting one of the biggest issues, the impunity enjoyed by the armed forces personnel who act as they please, commit terrible acts, all thanks to the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. As the UN report says, it is nearly 28 years that the law has been in force in Jammu and Kashmir. There has not been one single prosecution, let me repeat, not one single prosecution of armed forces personnel by the central government. This is unacceptable and has to end now. The EU must follow the recommendations from the UN report and urge for the establishment of a commission of inquiry into multiple human rights violations. Both sides of the line of control should allow access. Mr. Chairman, let me be clear. The lack of involvement from the European External Action Service in this process so far is absolutely shocking. Kashmiri blood is not a price Europe should pay for a good trade deal with India. Mr. Chairman, no doubt some of us are daunted by the challenge ahead. I will simply say that I believe peace is always possible. This continent was once devastated by wars between France and Germany, and now they're close allies. At one point, peace in Northern Ireland seemed distant and near impossible. Now it's hard to believe that the troubles happened only 20 years ago. This could be Kashmir. We can have peace and prosperity if everyone works together for this. Finally, ending conflict is not an impossible dream as long as stories that reflect both the realities of war and the possibilities of peace continue to be heard. But the first step must be to stop killing and persecuting innocent Kashmiris. In fact, we cannot get justice for the Kashmiris. If we can't get the justice for the Kashmiris, there will be no regional peace. I have one question for you, Madam Chung. What can we, as the European Union, do to support the report's recommendations that the UN establish a commission of inquiry? Thank you very much, Chairman.